Tobias, the floor is yours. The idea is really to learn what made other systems work and what can we borrow from them with the necessary precautions. Thank you. Over to you.
I know that I'm coming from a different side um, and a different perspective, very much from the commercial side. So I'll start with two naughty comments. The one is to say that you cannot tell a farmer to change their behavior, you have to show them. And first, you have to show them the value, and then you have to show them the practice, and then they do it. And another naughty comment would be to say, nothing unlocks finance like profitability. If a farmer shows profit to the banker, the banker will be only too happy. I'm going to share quickly the journey as I've seen it in terms of how we have changed productivity in the South African sector. So I'm not going to try to talk about your conditions. I'm going to talk about me. That's much better. So you can criticize me about my opinions about myself. So what are the key things that has changed agricultural sector? The intent of NAMPO originated actually in one of the most important things for today. It's farmers showing to farmers. It's value chain partners showing to farmers what they are doing. So it's basically a bare piece of land when you are there without the show, and everybody brings their technology, and the farmers come together and they discuss this technology and they discuss what should we do next. And the key element of that is profitability. How do we survive? What is the new thing that we can do to do our things better? When we talk about agroecology, and what exactly is agroecology? So I was a little bit confused. So one note to the researchers and the funders, the donors about agroecology, the thought that struck me, the moment you change from climate smart agriculture to sustainable agriculture, projects come, projects go, and the ball falls on the ground for very important research projects that are actually supposed to span many decades. So the importance there is also consistency. We won't be able to build strong agricultural systems if we take this approach or that approach and then the next fashionable word and the like. A key challenge that we are facing nowadays is that little, let's say, golden line, the one that goes to the top. That is Africa's reality. We're going to have the most working people in 10 and 15 years' time. But it's also an opportunity that we would like to do sustainably for environment, finances, and also very much for the farmers. So productivity, factories, all of these things are coming to Africa, and the whole world is going to change. So that figure there on the right-hand side indicates quality soils where you can actually produce a lot. Since I'm talking about South Africa, I'm looking at the availability of rain, that little one in the middle. In South Africa, we don't have enough water, and the success of farming is linked to the moisture that you are able to protect and keep within your soils. What happened? What was the evolution of agricultural technology? And I'm going to talk specifically about maize. So there was traditional farming, and that was in the 1900s, very manual, animal power, low yields. I still hear those stories from my dad. He worked with oxen. They had donkeys. He went to school on horseback. They didn't even have bicycles at that point. Myself, I was born around about the time in the 70s when we got the first tractors. And that really started, tractors, irrigation led to large-scale farming, and it increased the scale, and lots of limes and fertilizers starting to come in, leading to a big revolution from the 1960s. This is the Green Revolution. I'm not going to devote too much time on the Green Revolution. I'm going to try to tell the whole story as it is. Otherwise, I'll be caught in the very academic sides of it. But this is where we got high yield seeds, the hybrid seeds, combining that with fertilizers, gave us very high yields. So the high yielding varieties also required higher support from nutrients and the like to make sure that the plants can actually deliver those high yields. We spoke about, or usually we talk about all the negative externalities of this time. And yes, that is true. There's dependence on the fertilizers, the challenges with the soils, the pesticides that are being used. But we must also keep in mind the positive externalities, the children that became doctors and lawyers, the farms that became very profitable and big, and freeing up resources, providing cheap food to the population so that they can invest their time and money into building a more industrialized economy, building roads and the like. With that, I'm not ignoring the negative externalities, but we must also balance it. This was a cost-benefit decision that we've taken over time. The digital tools, the precision in agriculture really started happening over the last 20 years. Amazing times. I say to farmers and people of the public, the biggest robot you might see in your life is a big tractor with a planter behind it, putting seeds in the soil at 40 kilometers per hour, putting more seeds, less seeds. It's driving itself. The operator is not even driving that tractor. It's adding more or less fertilizers, adding exactly the right pesticides, and this at high speed. It is the most amazing picture of technology that you can see. It's also very expensive, and also we need to solve those kind of things. What's going to happen going forward? We see AI, artificial intelligence. But okay, in this case, I'm talking about the computers, artificial intelligence. Okay. Artificial intelligence is really going to change the way that we do things because we can think faster, apply faster, and adjust faster. We tend to forget that we operate in incredibly complex systems: soil, water, plant, herb, weeds, and insects. And all of those things come together. Even the slope, is it north facing, south facing? The kind of soils that we are operating. And this is really a big challenge, and computers are going to help us to understand this better and respond better. And then, of course, hopefully, this will lead in very smart climate actions. Precision agriculture, the ability to apply, identify very accurately and apply very accurately. It's one of the most beautiful things that we see in terms of using pesticides. The more precise we are, the less we can use. The more precise we are at applying fertilizer, the less we use, and we only apply exactly the right amount at the right place. So precision agriculture, to my mind, is still going to play a very strong role going forward. I do want to put out the new breeding technologies, the NBTs. It's a little bit of a tough topic within South Africa. There's a big distinction between new breeding techniques and GMOs. Some of the tools are the same, but it's where we looked at this new GMO thing. After many years of analyzing, we could see that we can use the tools in a responsible way. And new breeding techniques are those that we need to take forward. Biotechnology coming up. To my mind, the most exciting is the next frontier. All over the world, even our gut biome is being understood better, how much your stomach influences your moods, your health. And in the same way, we're going to understand better how the beneficial bacteria in soils impact and influence the plants in terms of how well they grow, how better they can protect themselves, and the like. We must understand that it's a very small part of the biome that is actually beneficial and will be interesting to work. And we have to work through huge masses of data and experiments to get to the point where this is going to work. So let's look at maize quickly. So up to the 1960s, that was where growth was rather slow. The increase of yield was about 18 kilograms over that time. 40 years, and then we discovered, or we started creating the tractors, and we could plow deeper. Why is that important? Because it loosens the soil, the root can go down and fetch more water down there. Nutrients and mineralization, that's where we find the very rough fertilizers, but also that really help plants. And we could see about 3.9%, 48 kilogram a hectare per year improvement. Then we got soil analysis. So we got the fertilizers, we used them to good effect, and then we got very clever around using it. So we started doing soil analysis, we started doing fertilizer planning, and this helped for another 5.4%. That's round about just to the early 80s. This part is usually an interesting time for South Africans. Huge changes. This is in the post-oil crisis time. Some of us, I remember vaguely, just from the stress of my parents, interest rates going into the 50s and the hundreds, and there was some very big droughts, some of the biggest droughts South Africa has ever seen. And what people tend to forget is isolation, and apartheid happened during this time. International policies also impacted and kept South Africa flat. If you try to isolate yourself from the world, you might get into trouble. Maybe that's a lesson for some politicians today. The marketing system changed. We had a single channel marketing system. Farmers were highly traumatized. They had to go and sell their own products. They didn't deliver it to government anymore, and they had to find markets. And this also helped farmers to start thinking very commercially about how to apply their inputs. It's not about producing and giving to government anymore. You need to make your calculations very carefully, understand your profitability, and to find a market. The application precision agriculture also made a huge difference, because the spreaders, I mentioned a little bit earlier, much more accurate. You don't spread your fertilizer all over, you put it exactly down where you want it to be. From the left to the right, I'll give them, this is the more complex one that you must or can take a picture of. On the left, you can see production of less than a ton. On the far right, we hit 6.3 tons. These are the bar graphs. That's the South African population from 98 to 2022. Okay, so you can see that population grew from just over 40 million to just over 60 million. So that's an increase of about what? Where's the youth? 50%, huh? So population increased by 50%. Okay, and you can see the productivity, the total production. I know it's jumping up, it's that blue line just below the bar graphs. You can see that farmers responded by producing more so that we can feed this population that grew by 50%. So we also increased our production by 50%. Now that green line at the bottom, that's a very interesting one. That is the hectares, the acreage, the area under production. And what do you see? Actually reduced. So we've been able to produce more of less hectares because of technology. Now this is the scary graph that we use to discourage young people from going into farming. Sorry, that's my bad sense of humor. What is always happening? So this is the most beautiful picture of creative destruction that Schumpeter talks about. We are feeding more and more people at lower and lower costs. A farmer has to survive. So that blue line up there, that's the, sorry, I see all these are in Afrikaans, but we're multilingual. So diesel is diesel. And that's what's happened to the diesel price. Do you see that line is increasing faster? Guess which one is the product price? It's the lowest. All of the farmers are so shocked. This is the lowest. So our income was rising much lower than our costs. So the seed prices is the green, so the gray line. The yellow line is the cost of our machinery and tractors. The red line is the cost of fertilizer. And you can see all of our costs are rising faster. So this is the terrible, harsh mechanism that's forcing farmers to produce more and more. So to the young people, yes, it is possible, but the only way that you will be able to farm profitably is to use technology better so that you produce more of less. So the only way you can be more profitable is to change your revenue or to change your costs. Now, the challenge, of course, is that we are price takers. We cannot increase our products, our revenue, specifically if you are producing a commodity like most grain farmers. So you have to do something about your costs. What can you do there? You can either look at how much you are producing, that's under your control. So you can produce more of the same hectare. You cannot change your price. You can use less of an input, or you can try to find your input at a lower price. Now, trying to find your input at a lower price, very, very difficult. We cannot change the diesel price, the fuel price. We cannot change the price of fertilizer. It's linked to international factors. So we can only use and look at profitability. So price recovery, changing the difference between what we get and what we pay, nearly impossible for a farmer. The most important thing that we need to do is to change our productivity. This is a slide that I got from one of our key projects. And you can see it's the Department of Western Cape here at the bottom. They're a partner with Grain South Africa in doing what we call conservation agriculture. The Department of Western Cape it's actually an amazing story. So the Southern Cape, those of you know the canola fields with the beautiful yellow flowers, the Southern Cape was never a viable production area. When they brought in conservation agriculture with soil moisture conservation and making sure that they conserve the moisture from one season to the next, that opened up a whole new and extra production area. How did they do it? And this is where the good professor said it's a movement driven by innovations, farmer ingenuity, tireless effort of the researchers, and to adapt and refine those systems for diverse environments. There were lots of interesting discussions around researchers that mustn't bring a solution, and the site is incredibly important. And that's why there are so many farmers, because your farm is different to any other farm. You even know your fields. One field is different to another field. We use a variety of technologies in different combinations to farm profitably. This is also where I pointed out, this is 5 decades of conservation agriculture. It's not a fast thing, but it is a very powerful thing.